See if it works.
Hello.
Does my beard show?
All right, I think we're rolling.
All right.
Hey.
Yeah, it's just, I can't remember where we left off on the other one, so maybe just say where you guys were born. And, like, Mom, you're the oldest, so this wouldn't apply to you, but I guess, well, yeah, it's where you're born and who your siblings were and where they were born to and about.
I'd have to get out my genealogy sheet. I was born in Vale, Oregon, and my oldest sister, Nellie, probably in Utah someplace, Delta maybe even. And my sister June maybe in Utah also, and Grace and May, I don't really know. I'm guessing Utah someplace. That's something I should kind of look at. My sister Bonnie was, I think, in Sandy, Utah, or Vale. I know my older sister, that just older than me, Laprille, was born in Vale, Oregon, where I was born. And I had a brother that only lived like 6 weeks, and he was born and died in Vale. He's buried in the Vale Cemetery next to my grandpa Ben Dixon.
He passed away from pneumonia, right?
Right.
At what age?
6
About
weeks.
6 weeks.
Can you list all your siblings from oldest to youngest?
That's what he's doing now, kind of, except you missed Joe.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, Joe. Well, there's Nellie and June.
Nellie's oldest.
and
May.
she's going to be 100 years old this year in September.
Yeah. And Grace. And then Joe. And then Bonnie and Laprille. And then Dean. And myself. And my sister Sharon. And Jerry Ann. And Rick.
How many is that?
There's 12 altogether.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
With a couple of miscarriages in there too. So Mom had a busy life.
But the older ones helped the younger ones. Mom couldn't do all that.
Yeah. My brother-in-law, Jay Stewart, told me that when my mom and Nellie would walk down the street, when Nellie was a teenager, I guess, or in her 20s or whatever, people would comment that they couldn't tell the difference between the mother and the daughter. So,
Because Mom was only, what, 14 when Nellie was born?
15, I think.
15.
Wow.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Sharon. Tell about your family.
Oh, it'll be short.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm the oldest in my family. I was born in California, the Bay Area, San Mateo. And even though I didn't have any siblings, my mother had 6 siblings, and I was one of the first grandchildren. So I was very wanted. I was
Spoiled.
Was that it? Maybe, but they all wanted me because I was one of the first babies. I did have a couple of older cousins, but they weren't around where anybody got very well acquainted with them. So my dad was in the service at the time.
Army.
Yes. And it was
Gotta
kind of
put a plug for the Army.
How many years in the Army was he?
Oh golly, I think maybe just 2 or 3. He was still in the Army when my brother was born 2 years later, because my brother was born in Los Angeles, close to where my dad was stationed. So he may have been there until the war was over. But it was interesting, when I was born, my dad took leave before I was born, but my dad said, I know she's going to be born this weekend. I need to leave this weekend. And sure enough, he got there and I was born. He had that, inspiration.
Yeah.
So we were always really close.
What year was that you were born?
1942. Yeah.
And the war ended what, 44, 45, something like that?
45, I think. Yeah, so he was there for a few years after but I think he left pretty much right after they were married.
But he was always in the United States, or he went overseas?
Well, we think he was always in the United States, but my brother will argue with that. My brother thinks he was sent over to the Philippines, but there's no real proof of that. And Norm tried to get a hold of all of his records to try and prove it, and he couldn't. They couldn't find him or something. But for what Dad said, I think it made Norm feel like he had done more than just stay in the United States. But, I know what it was. Dad drove these big equipment operators like Caterpillars and road graders, all those things. And so he would make roads, and Norm thinks that he was sent to the Philippines to do that. So no documentation of that. Anyway, so yeah, Norm was born in 44, my brother, and Charlene, my sister, was born in 52, 10 years after I was. So I was almost like a big sister to her.
Do you remember?
Like a second mom to her.
Yeah. Do you remember where your mom and dad met?
They met at a dance, was what they said. They went to Reno to get married. Yeah. That's about all I know. October 5th, 1940.
I think my dad and mom might have met at a dance too.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Maybe that was where
Well, we
you
didn't.
met people.
We didn't?
Oh, we did. Oh, you weren't a dancer.
I asked you to dance. That's a dance, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Was that the first thing that you ever said to her? Would you like to dance? So,
Yeah, I think it probably was.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What
Oh.
made you ask me to dance?
I was smitten from the first glance. I told my friend Charlie, I said, man, I gotta get to know this girl. And so I kept asking her to dance, slow dances, of course. And I was out there stumbling around on the floor. And anyway, I asked for her phone number, which she gave me, but it was the wrong phone number.
on purpose?
Well, she says no, but I don't know for sure. We'll never know.
You probably wrote it down wrong.
Well, I think it was right at the time when I called that number. It said that that number was no longer in service or whatever. And so then that was back in the day when you could call the telephone company, call information and get numbers. You know?
Like talk to someone?
Yeah, someone would talk to you and you'd say, can I have the number for Sharon Bjork? And I got the number. And
So they didn't limit that information. If you asked for it, they would give it to you.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so I got through to her and asked her out for a date. And
The story's
It was
probably
on
the
a-
other tape.
what's that?
This story's probably on the other tape.
Oh, well, anyway. Anyway,
We'll check the
We-
versions and see if they're accurate.
yeah.
Yeah, better.
She said, at the time when I asked her out for a date, now I can't remember exactly. You said yes, or you said no. That's my uncle's wake. My uncle's wake is going to be that night. I can't go.
My uncle passed away.
And I thought, I'd never heard of a wake. I didn't know what a wake was, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that actually happened at that point in time, or if it was later when I called her up and she said, "Oh, I can't make it Friday night because I have to go to my uncle's wake." And I thought, "Oh yeah, good story." You know, she gives me the wrong phone number, and then she tells me she's going to her uncle's wake. But I persisted, and got a date with her. We went to Ricky's Hyatt House.
Which was a nice place.
A nice restaurant or what?
Yeah,
Mhm.
the restaurant.
Yeah.
They had a piano player there in it, and it was a nice
It
place.
was a nice evening.
Yeah.
And I had on my yellow dress, remember?
Yeah. She had a nice tan, and she had on a nice yellow dress, and man, that sealed the deal right there.
Do you remember if you guys were into it from the start, like super into each other, or did it take some time to develop the relationship and continue to date other people and stuff, or you guys kind of hit it off from the start?
Well, I'll let Sharon respond to that.
Oh, I think I was dating maybe somebody else. And just going out with my girlfriends mainly. We like to go out and dance a lot because I love dancing. And because he didn't dance fast, he didn't make a big hit with me. But yeah, I kind of like this other guy. But I like Steve too. And so it just gradually, developed.
Yeah.
I know eventually I couldn't imagine my life without Steve. So I thought, this must be love. Is this what love is? I can't imagine my life without him.
Nice. So do you guys remember, like, who was, say, who was president? Can you remember, as far, like, when you were a kid, who the president was?
Well, the first president I remember is Dwight D. Eisenhower. And that was
during the war, right?
That was after the war.
After the war.
He was a general in the war, Second World War.
So was he right after Roosevelt? Or was it Truman?
Seemed like
Was it Truman and then
I don't know. Did
Eisenhower, or Eisenhower and then Truman? And then John F. Kennedy.
Seemed like Truman came after Eisenhower. I'll have to Google that one.
Yeah.
But Roosevelt was president when we were born, right? Because that was during the war.
Yeah. Yeah, Franklin D. Roosevelt was the president when we were born. Yeah.
But John Kennedy was really someone I really remember because he was so popular. Like, I really loved to listen to his speeches, and Jackie Kennedy was the it lady, and yeah, that was a very popular presidency.
How old were you when he was president?
Yeah, so it was probably, of course, 1960, he became president, and so I was born in 42, so I was 18. So I remember the day he was assassinated. I was at work in an orthodontist office there in Palo Alto, and we all started we were really upset about it. We really couldn't control our emotions very well. It was just such a shock.
Like, were you crying? Or you
I can't remember if I was. I know one of the girls there in the office was, maybe two of them.
It wasn't unusual for people to break down and
Yeah,
cry.
yeah, it was a shock. Yeah.
Everybody, Republicans and Democrats, liked him as a president.
I think so. Well,
I don't know.
you know, we were young. We didn't pay much attention. We all liked him, though.
I was in the Army, and actually in France, and it was at, well, it was after chow, and we were in the day room shooting pool, and one of the guys said, "Hey, the president's been shot." And so we all ran into his room, and he was listening to the radio, and I can remember all of us sitting around listening and almost crying. You know, it was a pretty emotional thing. And Joe, my friend, Joe Rayum, he was really upset because he was Catholic, and he really liked.
President Kennedy was a strong Catholic, too.
And so anyway, it was kind of strange. Even France, the whole country was mourning for the loss of President Kennedy.
And they were so popular in France because Jackie Kennedy was French.
And she knew how to speak the language.
Yeah, she was always real popular when they went there. In fact, President Kennedy would say, "Yeah, I'm just the man that accompanied Jackie Kennedy today."
And one thing that was interesting about that is that, well, back in the day, not very many people had television sets. And when I was over in France, of course, that was magnified. Not very many people had TV sets in their home. And when you go downtown in the little towns where I was stationed, there'd be a TV set in the window, and there'd be 10 or 15 people around watching what the news was for President Kennedy and his funeral and all that kind of stuff. People were just...
Well, it was a devastating time. We were all attached to the TV. We had TVs in California. Most everybody had one that I knew. And it was on TV for, till after the funeral. There was something about it. And so we were all glued to it. We all were mesmerized and, feeling those emotions.
Can you talk a little bit about joining the Army, Dad, and like what your thought process and what did Grandpa Merle, was he ever in the Army?
No,
Service?
he worked in the shipyards. Of course, he had a family of, 4 at least. Well, let's see.
Where were the
It
shipyards?
would be more than that, because you would have shipyards in Kirkland, Washington. He had 6 kids. Well, I don't know if the older kids were still in the house or not at that time, but he was unfit for the military service because he had a family, and also he was working in the shipyards. And
like those were people that they needed to do that job.
Right. Plus he had a family to feed.
Yeah.
And he was a hard worker. He worked really hard his whole life. And there wasn't anything that he didn't feel like he could conquer. You know, if there was something wrong with the house or the car or whatever the case may be, he was going for it. You know?
Yeah, wasn't afraid to dig into stuff and
Right,
try to figure it out and fix it.
right. And he would make do, you know, coming through the Depression. They didn't have the money to spend on different things, and coming through that, my brother Rick, being a carpenter, noticed on our house that we grew up in, when he bought that house and did a little remodeling, how my dad had essentially built that house in ways that were totally unconventional, but it saved lumber the way my dad did it versus the way it's done now, just because he couldn't afford it. But back when I was growing up, they had the draft, a military draft. Everybody had to sign up for the draft. And
When they were 18?
yeah, you had to register for selective service when you were 18 years old. And we could get information as to, everybody had a number. And we knew our number was coming up soon, that we would be drafted. And so we didn't have enough money to go back to college. I had served a little bit in college, and a couple of my friends, Merle Clemmo and Larry Johnson, and myself, we didn't have enough money to go back to college. So we said, well, why don't we just volunteer for the draft? In other words, kind of up our number to the top of the list so we can go get this Army thing over with.
Well, if you volunteered, you only had to serve 2 years, right? But if you were drafted, you had to serve 3.
Correct.
So
That was
was a
another
benefit.
incentive.
by joining,
But if you joined, you could choose your school or where you're going to be stationed and different incentives they would have. And so we just said, well, whatever happens, we don't know what we're going to get stuck in, but when you go into the Army, they test you a lot, you know. And so anyway, my friend Merle Clemmo and myself, we went in to be teletype crypto operators. And we went to school together back in Georgia, and drove his old 56 Ford all the way back to Georgia, Fort Gordon, Georgia, where we went to school.
What made you choose a telecryptic operator?
We didn't choose, we got assigned.
Oh.
Because we were only serving 2 years. We volunteered for the draft, which essentially is just like saying you were drafted. I mean, you didn't have any choice as to where you were or what you did or anything. And a lot of guys went into the infantry. And we thought, well, if we get stuck in the infantry, then let's go airborne, okay? We were Rambo, macho, you know? And even special forces, maybe we could go into special forces. Yeah, we all said, yeah, let's do that.
Was that even an opportunity if you wanted to do that?
Oh, if you pass the test and we're qualified, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad. Larry, who came in, what was it, 6 weeks after we did, because he had some legal things he had to take care of and couldn't come in with Merle and I. But he went airborne because he got stuck in the infantry. So if he would have come in the same time we came in, more than likely he would have got the same job we had.
Yeah.
Because he knew how to type real well, and Merle and I knew how to type because we had taken typing in the 9th grade, one semester. And Merle and I were both stationed in France. Merle was close to Paris, Drew Air Force Base, actually. And he would drive a Jeep into Paris every day to take messages and return home. They didn't have a comm center like I was. I was in a comm center.
Communication center?
Yeah, communication center. And anyway.
So he would have a bunch of letters in his truck or something?
Messages. And he had to carry a pistol with him and stuff like that. Yeah.
Secret messages, huh?
What's that?
Kind of important secret messages?
Oh,
I mean, you didn't want the enemy to get these messages.
Right.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of, what was the problem going on in France in that time? And right before we got there, there was,
De Gaulle?
no, the foreign country was raising heck in France. Oh man, I can't even think of the name of it now. Sorry. But anyway.
So he had easy duty when he was in the service.
I had real easy duty. It was just like an office job. As long as I was at work at 8 o'clock in the morning and did my job and, went home or went back to the barracks, showered, and got up the next morning and did the same thing. And
What was the actual job? Like, what were you actually doing?
well, sending and receiving messages
On
on a teletype.
What,
Yeah.
How is a teletype different than a typewriter? Is it like a telegram?
Teletype only has 3 rows of keys. And
same with a keyboard, right?
yeah, just like a keyboard, except it was only three rows. And so teletype, I remember a lot of the typing that we had to do was numbers. We were stationed at an ammunition depot. The Algerians were raising heck in France at that time. And so they had guards out at the ammo dump, we called it, where they stored all this ammunition. They didn't want the Algerians to get in there and raise heck, so no one was allowed in the comm center unless they had a crypto clearance. Even if you had a top secret clearance, you could not get in the comm center if you didn't have a crypto clearance. And all of us, of course, had crypto clearance that worked in the comm center. And we would work all day and send messages and receive messages and deliver messages to people like the post commander or whoever the message was for. And sometimes they would periodically come down and pick up messages. But on Fridays, every Friday was an ammo report. The ammunition in the dump had to be reported. And so, and they all had numbers, a series of numbers, kind of like a bin number for all the, I mean, it would be pages and pages and pages. Well, pages, probably 5 or 6 teletype pages of numbers. And
One thing nice about that, though, is after you were out of the service and you were going to college in California, you went to work for Shearson Hamill, and the skills that you learned as a teletype operator, that's what got you the job for Shearson Hamill, who was a stock brokerage. Yeah, so he put those skills to use.
Yeah, but you couldn't, on a teletype, if you make a mistake, there's a lever over here that you can push and back it up. In other words, it's making a tape. It's about that
Ticker
wide.
tape, ticker.
Ticker tape, yeah. And so you can back it up and do what they call letter it out. In other words, there's certain dots across there, and if you letter it out, that means it's like all 5 holes are punched, and that it means nothing. It's just like they skip over it. Well, on the ammo report, you could not have any letters on your report. It had to be totally accurate, and if you got to the last line and you made a mistake, you had to start all over again. It was pretty stressful.
So you were in France for how long?
About a year and a half.
He drove around and saw some of Europe when he was there.
Yeah.
He bought a Volvo,
Yep.
had it shipped back over to the States, and had to wait in New York for it for 6 weeks or something like that.
50 days.
Wow, that's longer than 6 weeks.
What did you do in New York for 50 days?
Not much. I
Stayed in
did.
this cruddy hotel.
Yeah, it was $3.25, I think, a night for this hotel. It was right across from Grand Central Station. I remember that. And on Maddox. No, not Maddox. I'll think of that street later. But
So you were a loan shark when you were in the Army too, weren't you?
you don't have to tell them that.
What does that mean?
He'd loan people money but charge them interest on it. The next payday, they'd have to pay him back more than what they borrowed.
Yeah.
So he made money.
Yeah, that's how I afforded my car and afford to go on leaves and stuff like that.
Made a lot of money.
I purchased a lot of nice clothes and the PX and stuff. But GIs are so dumb, I don't know. Anyway,
So yeah, so what did you do in New York for those 50 days?
well,
Did you have a TV in your room or what?
no, TV, no. The bathroom was down the hall, and
Went to a lot of movies.
I went to Times Square
So
quite a
you'd
bit.
go walk around New York and stuff.
Well, it was in the winter time. It was really cold. New York in winter is not fun for me. And I was kind of half sick, had a cold, and I just was,
Did you have a beard at that time?
oh yeah, I grew a full beard.
Black.
It was all
So he
black.
probably looked a little scary.
And so I used to ride the shuttle down from Grand Central down to Times Square and watch a movie, or watch a couple of movies or whatever. And I read a few books, but didn't do a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I met a Japanese guy. He was from Hawaii, but he was working at one of these little snack bar things there. And just kind of struck up a conversation with them, and it was so good to actually talk to someone. I didn't realize how strange that was to go around a city with millions of people and no one talks to anybody. So anyway,
So you didn't go to any bars or anything like that?
no,
Good boy.
but that was the first time I saw pizza being sold by the slice. It was right there on the sidewalk, you know, they have an open window there and selling different things, but I'd never even heard of such a thing.
He's pretty green because he lived in Moses Lake all his life, and there wasn't much in Moses Lake.
No.
Well, they didn't have it in Paris. Of course, Paris isn't noted for its pizza, I don't think.
How often did you go to Paris?
Oh, I don't know, 5 or 6 sometimes. I don't know.
Let me.
Start with mom.
All right, Mom, we'll go. Give me just short answers. We'll go with all your family members, and then you can do your kids afterwards. But what? How would you describe your mom, her personality and stuff, or anything about her that would be interesting to know?
Yeah, she had a beautiful voice, and she sang, and she would sing once in a while in performances, and I was really proud of her because I really enjoyed her voice, and she loved that too. She always loved good music, and yeah, and I remember when we lived in Covelo, which was a Indian reservation. My dad was up being a lumberjack, driving a truck up into the mountains to get logs and bring them down. She sang with this man who also had a nice voice. His name was Charlie Guncher. And I remember that performance. It was just lovely. I was very proud of her. So at the time, I was probably 7 years old. And let's see, what else? She was also very creative. We never knew what the house was going to look like when we got home because she would always rearrange the furniture. And she was real creative about it. We didn't have a whole lot, but she always made it look nice.
I can vouch for that.
And she was artistic. She could draw, and she used those skills. And actually, one of her grandchildren, Caitlin, Charlene's daughter, Mom lived up here in Washington, and so she didn't have a lot of interaction with Caitlin, but she would draw pictures for Caitlin and made a binder of these pictures. And it was a bonding between them. That was a really good thing.
Yeah.
What
about,
else?
what
Yeah,
about your dad?
Oh, my dad. I
Well,
loved my
one
dad.
thing about your mom that really intrigued me was that she would watch the World Series and stuff on TV, and she had a notebook that she had it all written down, play by play, who was pitching, how much, what the count was, who was on first, who was on second, all that other kind of stuff. And she had a real ledger there going.
She did.
I don't know.
She loved sports, and she was a good athlete. She played girls softball when she was younger. In fact, they all did. Mary, Franny, and Mom, and maybe Dorothy too. So actually, when Norm and his friends were out there, she'd hit fly balls to them out in the street to give them practice, baseball practice.
Nice.
Yeah, and yeah, a lot of good things. Just
Anything? What about your dad? Say a couple things about him, and then you can talk about Charlene and Norm.
okay. Oh, my dad was so handsome. All my girlfriends had a crush on him, and he was so kind and so tender. He was a tender man. Yeah, I really loved him. We kind of had a bond. Once he told me, he says, "You know, I love you more than anything in this whole world." And I thought, boy, I feel sorry for my mom and Norm. Don't you love them? Anyway, we did have a close bond. And he was a hard worker. He was very, what would I say, sensitive to those that were less fortunate than we were, and made sure that we were always aware of that in people, and that we never shunned people because maybe they weren't as, popular or whatever as we were. So he was sensitive to things like that. And his father, Grandpa Bjork, was one of the kindest, most gentlest men I ever knew. Except for one night when Mom and Dad were gone, Norm and I had a party at our house, and Grandpa lived with us, so he was in his bedroom. And we were having that party, making too much noise, I guess, because Grandpa came out and he says, "Can't you guys be quiet?" Because we really bothered him. So we just kind of sulked down and said, "Okay, Grandpa." That's the only time I remember him ever really raising his voice, telling us to be quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, tell me the story that you told me yesterday about the differences in the way that your family talked compared to the way Dad's
Oh,
family talked.
yeah.
Or maybe Dad can share it.
Yeah, our family was always very sweet to each other. I mean, we talked very kindly, and anyway, called my aunt, used the word honey all the time, and we were gentle and kind. And so when I met
Was
your
that-
dad,
Sorry, was that on the Bjork's, your mom's side or your dad's side, that kindness?
well, I think it was kind of from both. One, from mom's side, it was more like honey, sweet. You know, Aunt Franny was always calling us sweetheart and honey. And mom wasn't as much that way, but Mary was always kind and gentle too. And but on Dad's side, it was more soft-spoken and caring. But they didn't use the names like honey and sweetie and all of that.
Yeah.
So when I met Steve, one of the things that impressed him about me was we were in my apartment with friends, and we were playing, what were we playing? Hearts. It's a card game. And so you try and select the Queen of Spades, so you don't have all these points against you. And so instead of Steve having to eat the Queen of Spades,
Instead of sloughing it to me,
yeah, when I could have,
she ate it maybe.
yeah, and he couldn't believe I did that because he is such a cutthroat for games. You know, you actually ate that instead of giving it to me, right?
Yeah.
He couldn't believe I did
It was
that.
a shocker to me. Because I grew up playing hearts with my relatives, and boy, they were cutthroat.
Yeah, games were cutthroat in the Tolley family, but in my family it wasn't so much cutthroat, but we had to let Grandma win. Right?
Right.
If she didn't,
Oh, yeah.
if she thought you were getting the best of her, she gave us the evil eye.
Oh, yeah.
How can you do that to your grandma?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you share some interesting things about Norm and Charlene?
Sure, Charlene was the baby. Norm was always my mom's favorite, her son. You know, that's the way Charlene and I saw it. You know, that, oh yeah, just another girl, but Norm was it. And, you know, which was okay. She loved to go watch Norm play his sports. And Norm was a very good athlete in baseball. That's what I remember him doing mainly. And we would, yeah. They traveled with Norm around watching his baseball games, and we went to. Charlene was 10 years younger, so across the street from us, there was a family that was very close to us. And they had a daughter, Michelle Nielsen, whom was the same age as Charlene. And they were just like this. They were just the closest friends, and they still are today. Charlene was going to fly to Oregon to spend a couple of weeks with Michelle. And so, yeah, Aunt May, who was Michelle's mother, would babysit Charlene when my mom went to work. And Norm and I, of course, were in school. And yeah, Charlene was always very tender-hearted. She didn't know what to think of Steve when we got married, because Steve wasn't that way coming from his kind of brash family, which were survivors, you know, through a lot of things. Do you remember hitting her in the forehead with a spoon?
Trying to forget stuff like that.
Broke Charlene's heart. Anyway,
Let's hear that story.
yeah.
I can't remember.
At least it wasn't a knife.
It was a wooden spoon,
Oh, okay.
so it's not gonna hurt.
It did hurt.
What's
It's
the
not
story?
gonna hurt.
Tell the story.
I don't know if he just did it out of we were talking and laughing, frustration maybe, yeah.
And anger to some degree, obviously. But I don't know what was going on. I can't remember.
Well, he was a little rough sometimes, you know, too much testosterone. And Charlene was just the opposite.
Yeah.
Because she married Brian, who was a very gentle, soft-spoken person, and Steve was just kind of the opposite then.
Yeah.
But we were athletic more, Steve and I. We enjoyed tennis together. We'd go play tennis, and I had friends that played tennis. We'd go play doubles with them, and Suzanne and Stan. We had a lot of friends when we were first married. And we did a lot athletically, but yeah, swimming. We lived in an apartment that had a swimming pool, so we swam all the time. And yeah, we liked the outdoors. It was pretty there. Go to the ocean.
We'll maybe on the next video, Dad, we'll have you go through your siblings, but I wanted to chat with you guys real quick about like changes throughout your lifetime, like dealing like the internet, like currently interest rates are a little bit higher, but back in the 80s there was a time when interest rates were like 15% or something, right?
Well,
Or 12%.
close to it, yeah. Because we bought a new car in the 80s, and the interest rate was 12.5 or something like that. And the salesman says, "Boy, you better grab that because it's going to go up, and you better get it while you have the chance." So we did.
Do you remember that being a big discussion amongst the country about like, what are we all gonna do? These interest rates are crazy, or was it not as
I
big
think
of a
a lot
deal?
of people were concerned about it, but I can't remember any specifics.
Because
Just like now, I mean, interest rates are high, relatively speaking.
but I guess now a lot more things are bought with credit, whereas 40, 50 years ago, you would buy a house and a car on credit, but maybe it has more impact now than it did then. I don't know.
Yeah, well, if people are using their credit card nowadays and not paying it off at the end of the month, I feel sorry for them.
No.
Because they're not.
Because we've been there, right? We've been there when we were first bought our house.
Oh yeah, we've had
Yeah,
financial
we got-
problems.
On Sharon, when
Mm-hmm.
you bought that house, things were tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my girlfriend said, yeah, Sharon, Steve not only bought you a house, he bought you a street.
What do you guys remember anything about when the internet came out? Thinking anything about that, or what your take was on that at all?
Boy, I don't.
I don't. The only thing I remember about the internet was up behind Stanford. There's a old hangout called Rosati's, and they have a plaque. And we were there just scoping the place out, and we walked in there, and there was a plaque on the wall, and it says this is where the internet started.
Mm-hmm. Home of the internet. Some students in there started it,
And of
developed
course,
it.
that was a
or
long
whatever.
time after the internet was actually working. But when it actually came out, I don't recall.
I don't either. Maybe we were too busy trying to survive raising kids and everything.
Remember?
So do you remember?
I I remember getting
What?
getting encouraged or talked into buying a Commodore 64.
By John? Or
Yeah.
by who?
And I think John was the main instigator there.
Yeah.
And I think your mom was pretty excited about getting one. And so we did.
Yeah, that was a Christmas for you kids. It was a really good Christmas that you all remember, because I think we got the Commodore 64 and a microwave and something else. I don't know. Did we get them the bikes then?
Well, that's what I was trying to think. I don't know.
3 things they got for Christmas that were pretty cool.
Indoor plumbing.